Ammon Bundy, by his attorneys, has filed a motion to dismiss the charges against him in Oregon for a lack of jurisdiction. That motion will be denied. I have put a link to that motion in the description of this video. There are a number of problems with that motion. The first and most glaring problem is that the motion is devoted almost entirely to the idea that the federal government could not own the land that the Malheur Wildlife Refuge was on. Nowhere in the brief will you find anything indicating what Ammon Bundy was charged with, nor what the elements of that offense were. So even if their brief proved what it claims to prove, it would not negate an element of the offense, and therefore it is not a grounds for dismissal. The second problem is that it's really just a reiteration of Ammon Bundy's belief that Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 limits the amount of land that the federal government can own. Just go look it up in your nearest source of the Constitution and read it. What that passage plainly states is how the federal government is to acquire exclusive jurisdiction for legislation over an area. With regards to the land in the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, there is no claim by the government that there is exclusive jurisdiction. The main problem the Bundys have is they do not understand the concept of jurisdiction. Where I am standing right now, I'm under the jurisdiction of the federal government, the state government, the county government, and the city government. If you go about 12 feet that way, you'll run into a building that within the last 5 years went from possession of the federal government to the city government. Just because the federal government owns a building does not mean that it has exclusive jurisdiction over the building. The third error that the Bundys have made is that they somehow claim that there's adverse possession. I will now put in the video the statute with regards to adversely possessing federal. I will now put in the Bundys' claim for adverse possession. If you do the math, the Bundys occupied the wildlife refuge for 41 days, and that means that their claim for adverse possession is 19 years and 324 days short. The final aspect of the Bundys not understanding the Constitution is they neglect to take into account other portions of Article 1, Section 8, particularly the first clause, which is to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. So having a national wildlife refuge may well be part of the general welfare. Then they also exclude the part, or they also ignore the part of Article 1, Section 8 that says, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or any department thereof. With that final clause, that indicates that all the powers of the federal government are not in just Section 8. The Bundys also, with regards to their lack of understanding of jurisdiction, tried to slip in that the federal government claims to have exclusive jurisdiction. I will now put in two portions of their brief that claim that. Part of the narrative with regards to the Hammonds is before they were charged in federal court, there was an attempt to have them charged in state court. The state prosecutor chose not to prosecute them, and therefore the federal prosecutor chose to prosecute them on federal charges. That again contradicts their claim that the federal government claims exclusive jurisdiction. Finally, the Bundys claim that the Constitution makes it so that when a state becomes a state, all the federal land in the state becomes state land. There is nowhere in the Constitution that it says that. At best, the Bundys have proven that the federal government cannot own the land. However, since the Constitution does not mention where the land would go, the question becomes, should the land belong to the state? Should it belong to the people in the state individually? Should it belong to the county? Or should it belong to all the people of the United States individually? That question is not answered in the Constitution, and they just made up. Sometimes they claim it should belong to the state, and sometimes they claim it should belong to the counties. For all these various reasons, their motion to dismiss will not be granted, and it will take the judge a nanosecond to deny the motion. That will not include time that the judge spends rolling on the floor laughing.